something that
call the
we should
meeting
have
to
made.
order.
At least, you know, people.
I'm going to call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 6 p.m. here in Council Chambers. I believe we do have remote electronic attendance necessary.
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to make a motion to approve the remote electronic attendance of Second Ward Alderman Alvaro Macias, Fourth Ward Alderman Matt Timian at the Committee of the Whole and Council meetings of May 10th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Finish us.
We actually have to do a roll.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Please,
Sorry.
roll call, please.
Alderman Williams?
Present.
No.
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye or nay.
Slash present.
Because we have to make sure they can hear us.
Yeah.
Alderman Macias?
I don't know.
Wentz?
Aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Waldron?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.
Thank you. And is it possible to put them on the screen up here so that, well, I can see if they ask questions? Thank you. All right, next item are board appointments, a reappointment of currently serving members, Mark Evans and Jeff Waller, to the Revolving Loan Fund Committee for their full 5-year term. Reappointment of Sarah Cross to the Youth Commission for a full 3-year term. And appointment of Bob Poor to the Library Board to fill the unexpired term of Scott Bull to expire May 31, 2023. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move to our only proclamation this week.
That's weird.
And the proclamation states, whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Moline. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children of Moline to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2022 marks the 62nd Annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association and Canadian Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Sangeeta Rayapati, Mayor of Moline, do hereby proclaim May 15th through 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Week.
Yeah.
Outstanding department, Joe.
Mr. Kulick.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, Council. Second time in as many meetings, I get the honor to stand up here and thank you for your support and dedication to our folks and our professionals down there. The Public Works is ready. Ready and resilient is our slogan this year. So, as Public Works professionals, we're first responders. We're out there when we need to be, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, and your support is really appreciative. So, thank you for this.
Thank you.
Here you go, Joe.
All right, do we have any public comment this evening? Okay, hearing none. Any questions on the agenda? No? So we move to our Committee of the Whole agenda items. 7.1, an ordinance amending Chapter 35 Zoning and Land Development of the Moline Code of Ordinances by enacting thereto amendment of the zoning map incorporated therein as Section 35-3103. Mr. Deepak?
Sure, I can speak briefly on this, Mayor and Council. The city received a request from the Doric Lodge, which is a longstanding organization here in Moline, to rezone property that they acquired, specifically at the address that's 5020 47th Avenue, and to rezone that from R2 to community to R2 single-family residence. It's 2.19 acres. It's a portion of the property that exists at that location, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the rezoning, as does the Community Economic Development Department.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Moyer, second by Alderman O'Brien. Discussion? Yes, Mr. Went?
Yeah, and I apologize for not getting this in earlier, but as I'm just looking at this real quick, we've got lot 1, lot 2, and then the remainder outlot, right?
Correct.
It's now going to be allowed to be subdivided off.
Correct. These would be subdivided off of the original conservation lot,
Okay.
basically. Yes.
And I just thought about this as I was driving over here, as I passed the John Deere wall that we've got. So over by this reminds me of a situation a while back where at the John Deere house, there was a resident who, there was a part of land that he did not want to mow anymore, did not want to have to deal with the retaining wall anymore. So he subdivided just that portion off and then let it go to taxes. And then there was a whole lawsuit because his idea was that it would then become somebody else's problem because he wouldn't own it any longer. And to that point, I think it wound up costing the residents probably about $500,000, and we recaptured maybe $300,000 in a lawsuit to build that retaining wall. My concern is what ties anyone to this lake if somebody just wants to let it go, not pay taxes on it, not do anything, and just I don't know the answer to that. I mean, that's my concern is if you're parceling off something that cannot be developed and is only seems to be a
Right.
So, the valid question, did you want to send it back to the committee to get that answer?
I didn't know
or-
if maybe somebody
I
could
don't
answer
believe-
that question. I
I
don't
don't
know.
believe anybody from CED is here. I guess in looking at the project itself, obviously there's an existing structure on Lot 1, and that's where the lodge would actually locate. I believe it was a dental facility of some type. There was some kind of commercial operation at that location at one time in history. And then they went through the process of acquiring that. Lot 2, I think that's part of the question. I mean, they obviously would own Lot 2, and they would be responsible to maintain it. The remaining portion of this property, I mean, just looking at it as a residential development would tell me that the property owners that are adjoining this and within that subdivision, I would think at that time, probably have some kind of covenants that they are responsible. I would think, in my experience outside of this city, that would be the norm.
You would think.
I would
That's-
think,
that's
but
my concern.
I can't answer your question more than that.
Mr. Waldron?
My recollection and history with it is that the Doric Lodge is leasing the property. They're not necessarily owning it, or they have a long-term lease. There is an owner of the lakes behind this property, and I think the Doric Lodge wants out of this now and is going to, so I think the original property owner who owns really the whole land and the lakes still owns those lakes. Alderman Went makes a good point, though. I mean, that is the liability of those 3 lots if we approve this. I don't have any issue with changing it to R2. I mean, that's actually a better use than what it's sitting there now as an open field. But I guess I would like to hear that answer from staff on what is the tie for those lakes. I mean, is it a separate owner? I mean, what? I guess that's with any property, though. We always face that with a property.
Mr. Went?
And I don't disagree with you, but this is like almost specifically, let's cut off the liability from the productive portion.
Well, their original ask, if I remember correctly, in the application that went out, was to rezone the entire thing.
Yep.
The lakes included, and then some of the neighbors in the
Yes,
Heritage
correct.
subdivision had a little pushback that they were afraid they were going to be filled in and would ruin their property values. So I think because of the residents' concerns, they carved or left that portion alone and just went for the 2 outlots.
Mr. Went?
Yeah, I share Alderman Waldron. I don't have any problem with the rezoning. I think that's
Right,
great.
the
But
zoning is right.
I think I'll do this because I think that this is a important question that needs to be answered so that we understand that we don't wind up with this weird liability. Because I think historically there's been some talk like, hey, you city, you should be dredging this and you
Right.
need to take care of this because this is stormwater.
This
And
is your water coming off the hill,
Right.
filling these lakes up.
And so, with that said, I think I'd like to move that we send this back to staff to answer the question on how that liability on the lake is going to be answered moving forward.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Just a question. So what you're
Yes.
looking for specifically is who currently bears responsibility for the maintenance of the lake, and after the rezoning, who would bear responsibility for the maintenance of that water property?
And
'Cause it's about
how do
9
we
acres.
assure that that is taken care of in perpetuity? That it's not just like, hey, this guy's in charge or responsible today, but you know, he just stops paying taxes and lets it go, passes away, whatever, and then we wind up on the hook for
Your
it.
Honor,
Yes,
I
Mr.
just want to make a
Waldron.
comment on it. I don't know how you ever get that assurance, though.
Oh.
Any owner could tell you they'll do that, and
Well,
then just,
but you can tie it to these other two properties that says if it's not taken care of, it's the responsibility. You can do all sorts of deed I mean, there's a multitude of ways within real estate to do that, and you know, I mean, even to the effect if really all of these residents around here think that this is an amenity, that they're concerned that it's going to be filled in, maybe we find some solution, as the administrator mentioned, maybe we work on setting this up the way it probably should be, where they all are responsible because they get the benefit of it without any of the liability of it.
So you're clear on what this is going back to staff for?
The challenge.
Oh,
The question is the challenge he
Yeah.
just threw out.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're dealing with all of these existing adjoining property owners around the lake, I mean, they obviously have a vested interest in its upkeep, right? They don't want it to turn into an algae pond.
Right.
Right? They want to keep it so that it's at least clean and it's fresh and, you know, it's not disruptive to
Mosquitoes.
their view. Mosquitoes, correct. And the real question is, and I think you'd have to go back literally to the time it was platted and see what the city at that time approved. And if they did not approve anything that required adjoining property owners to share in the maintenance responsibility of the lake, then the question, to answer your other question, is who bears that responsibility, or historically who has borne that responsibility? And I don't think I have the answer tonight. We can try and research that. But I
Okay.
think the rezoning is in line, and I think the Planning Commission recommendation to rezone is appropriate.
My only concern is, and this is why I'm saying it, is because once we rezone this and allow this as a different parcel, then they can record it as such, and then all leverage is gone. And so that's why I'd like to get this answered first before, because if we get the answer afterwards, after we've already let it go, we may not like the answer and would say, we probably wouldn't have let them subdivide then.
Okay, so the motion right now is to send it back to staff. And it's seconded by Alderman Waldron.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, what was that?
We'll have to do roll call
Roll-
throughout.
Oh, yes, because people are online. Thank you for reminding me.
Sure.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
aye.
Macias. Went.
Aye.
Timian. Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.
Okay. We move to item 7.2. Resolution authorizing municipal services general manager to sign a quote from New Sign Supply, Texas, Houston, Texas, for the purchase of an HP 365 64-inch print and cut and an update to the Traffic CAD software program.
Mayor and council, it is as it is.
Move to approve.
We have an ancient piece of equipment, not ancient, but an old piece of equipment that is failing and software that is no longer supported, and we love our signs. So we're looking for a new machine.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman O'Brien, seconded by Alderman Went. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.
Motion passes. 7.3, resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to appoint Kay Whitley, Community Development Manager, Local Government Director for the Illinois Quad Cities Land Bank Authority.
Move to approve.
Second.
Can I comment?
Motion by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Williams. Discussion. Do you have anything to add, Mr.?
I had to think long and hard who I would want to appoint to this. And I woke up one night and her name just popped in my head, and I said, yes, it'll be KJ.
Okay, thank you. All right, hearing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.
Thank you, that motion passes. 7.4, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an amendment to the funding agreement between the city of Moline and the Illinois Housing Development Authority, IDA, for the city's participation in the trust fund single-family rehabilitation program round 2, collectively SFR, and do all things necessary to implement said program requirements. Mr. Vitas.
Yes, this is simply advancing a correction to the original agreement, which inadvertently left East Moline and Silvis out.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Alderman Schmidt, second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.
Thank you. 7.5, an ordinance amending Chapter 1, general provisions of the Moline Code of Ordinances by repealing Chapter 1 in its entirety and enacting in lieu thereof one new Chapter 1 dealing with the same subject matter.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Schmidt, seconded by Alderman Moyer. Discussion. Yes, Mr. Schmidt, and then Mr. Wendt.
I have a question and potentially one amendment that I'd like to make, depending on legal counsel's answer, specifically relating to gender. We have the language, a word imparting the masculine gender only shall extend and be applied equally, and so on. I guess my question is there a reason we're calling out that masculine, or would it just be that any word imparting gender should extend and be applied equally to all gender identification and so on?
So much of the code refers to people in the masculine gender. So as we do updates, we can certainly change that, but as it stands today, there are many provisions where the masculine gender is used.
And I guess I understand why that's how it's called
Yeah.
out, because that's the practice. But my concern being then someone writes she into a change to the ordinance later, and it now only apply. It does not apply universally. It does not apply to corporations or to men. That's why any pronoun should just. I think it should be any applies to all. And if we're in a situation where we need to specify, then it could always be called out in that instance.
So you would say the reading would be a word imparting any gender shall extend to all, to be applied equally.
And that's my thought. Before I came forward with an amendment, I did want to ask if there's any legal reason why not to do it that way.
No, I think you're 100% right.
That makes sense.
So,
So-
can I go ahead?
Please, I'll second it.
I just don't want to get out of turn. So I'd like to make a motion to change in the definition of gender to be a word importing any gender shall extend and be applied equally to all gender identifications,
Blah, blah, blah. Second.
and so on and so forth.
Okay, motion by Alderman Schmidt, seconded by Alderman Wendt. That's it, yes. Discussion, Mr.
I
Waldron.
have a question. If that's the case, then why do I need to call out as well as transgender and gender neutral or non-binary?
Well, non-binary is no identifiable gender. So you do want to acknowledge that identity is separate. Same as transgender, because that is fraught with confusion. So you, an individual might be identified male at birth, but identify themselves as something other than that. So we do separate those. And by the way, we took this definition
Yeah, I was gonna say, so it's consistent with,
Yeah.
that would be federal language? State language.
State.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Wen?
Yeah, I think just for clarification, I think the first half is how it's documented throughout, and then the second half is how it is applied to the world.
Thank you. Anything further discussion on this? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Nay.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Nay.
Schmidt.
Aye.
6 ayes, 2 nays.
Okay, that motion passes. So we are back to the chapter 1 in its entirety. Yes, Mr. Wen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. I appreciate including juvenile now minor on 1109, just for clarification, so that makes sense. You want to?
Juvenile should be strict.
Exactly. You guys had originally put juvenile in the header, and then you stuck it into and now it's minor, and I know we emailed back and forth a little bit about that. Since, and I don't know if this matters, but since it doesn't define minor within Chapter 1, but within Chapter 8, it defines it two different ways. Do we need to determine, I mean, and it's usually on the difference is on the low end. One says that a minor starts at 7, goes to before they reach 18, and one says that once you reach 12 to 18, I mean, I can't imagine that we're going to have a whole lot of issues with 11-year-olds, but there's, I was going to say, there are some issues pertaining to, with some of these stolen cars and different things. What definition of minor are we using at that point?
Right, so it would be a minor is defined in the particular code section. And by the way, the municipal code has a whole other definition of minor. So we avoided trying to define it here, as it will be defined relative to the code section, either state or city, that is being applied.
So you're saying,
So a minor defendant could be somebody over 12 and under 18 in one instance, and then be something different in a different instance.
And this just says that if they're found guilty or whatever, here's an alternative
Yes.
punishment. Okay.
so in this instance, the non-alignment across makes sense because of how it's applied, those sections are applied. Got it.
So I do appreciate you changing it from juvenile to minor, because I think that lines up with our code.
So juvenile has definitions as well in state statute.
But just not in our code.
Right, so we thought rather than, and in many instances, they intersect.
Yeah.
But you are right, that minor is certainly much simpler and relates to our code.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.
Motion passes. Concludes that section. We move to our informational. Mr. Vitas, our status and information report.
Sure, Madam Mayor and members of council, happy to present you with the month of May status and information report on all projects going on presently within the city of Moline by all of your departments across the board. The 29-page report pretty much summarizes all things that have been going on in the previous month in April, and going forward, we plan on continuing this reporting methodology unless we hear otherwise. The one reason why I do like to have it presented here is that it becomes a part of the permanent record of the city, as a part of an agenda, as opposed to simply just placing it on our administration page, on our webpage. So this makes it part of the permanent record, so it's searchable at future dates in terms of the accomplishments and the progress the city's making going forward. Any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. If not, you can always stop in and chat with me, have a cup of coffee.
Anything from the council on that item? Okay, hearing none. Is there any public comment now? Oh, okay. So we move to calling our regular council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have an invocation from Mr. Williams. Would you like us to stand?
Please. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of our great community. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Present.
Macias.
Present.
Went.
Present.
Timian.
Present.
Moyer.
Present.
O'Brien.
Present.
Waldron.
Present.
Schmidt.
Present.
Your Honor, I request approval of Committee of the Whole Council and Executive Session Minutes of April 26, 2022, and appointments made during Committee of the Whole, May 10th, 2022. Resolutions. Council Bill 1092-2022, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Emery Construction Group Incorporated for project number 1368, 2022 alley reconstructions for an amount of $219,544. Council Bill 1093-2022, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Emery Construction Group Incorporated for project number 1383, 2022 sidewalk program for an amount of $242,323.75. Council Bill 1094-2022, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Miller Trucking and Excavating Company for project number 1376, U.S. Route 6 water main crossing for an amount of $105,850. Council Bill 1095-2022, a resolution authorizing the approval of resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code for motor fuel tax, section number 1200251000RP, 5th Avenue reconstruction, 17th to 19th Avenue, for the amount of $1,149,795.51. Council Bill 1098-2022, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to to apply for a state highway permit from the Illinois Department of Transportation and to execute the necessary forms in conjunction with the Dia de los Muertos Parade sponsored by Mercado on 5th, scheduled for Saturday, October 22nd, 2022. Council Bill 1099-2022, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to to apply for a state highway permit from the Illinois Department of Transportation and to execute the necessary forms in conjunction with the Unity Pride Parade sponsored by QC Pride Incorporated, scheduled for Saturday, June 18th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
There's a second?
So second. Sorry.
Motion by Alderman Schmidt, second by Alderman Wendt. Roll call,
Oh,
please.
I did have a quick question, and I apologize. The Fifth Avenue project, has that always been on the CIP?
That's the one from several years back that
Yes.
we have to finish the paperwork on it.
That goes back to,
Yeah.
that goes back to the,
Old project.
a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
Just to clean up the.
It's just
From
paperwork.
2009. Okay. Because I was like, I don't. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Sorry. about
All
that.
right,
No
so,
financial impact.
Yeah.
any further discussion?
What's going on?
Roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Nay.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
7 ayes, 1 nay. And that motion passes. Non-consent agenda resolutions. Council Bill 1096-2022, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to appoint a local government director for the Illinois Quad Cities Land Bank Authority.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Nguyen, second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion passes. Council Bill 1097-2022, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a funding agreement and single-family rehabilitation conditional commitment letter between the City of Moline and the Illinois Housing Development Authority, IDA, for the city participation in the Trust Fund Single Family Rehabilitation Program Round 3 with roof-only option and disaster contingency award, collectively SFR, and acceptance of $416,500 in funding, and to do all things necessary to execute all assurances and certifications to IDA for the SFR, and authorizing the Community and Economic Development Department to begin work upon execution of the funding agreement and single-family rehabilitation conditional commitment letter between the city and IDA for the SFR, and do all things necessary to implement said program requirements.
Move to approve. My
Second.
fault.
Motion by Alderman Nguyen, second by Alderman Moyer. Discussion. Mr. Schmidt.
I'm sorry to be really picky. The paperwork here says round 2, but when clerk spoke, she said round 3. I don't know if that makes a difference.
I know, I'm sorry, did you see me looking at KJ? That was corrected, it should have been round 2, and so thank you.
Okay, and I don't know if it matters to what was said versus what's approved.
Thank you.
Well, do it in a move to amend to say that it's two.
Okay,
Yeah,
then
it's easiest.
I'll make a motion to amend to relate to round 3 of the program. No, I'm sorry, to remove round 3 and replace it with round 2.
Second.
From the motion.
Motion by Alderman Schmidt, second by Alderman Nguyen.
That's the easiest way to solve it.
There's a comment from Ms. Whitley.
Is it possible to have another edit? Because we're not accepting funding. We already have the funding. So we're not accepting the 500 or the 300,000. This is just to correct it so we can get reimbursed for the work we already completed. So if we can just have the record reflect that, it's just a correction to the geographical area to include Silvis and East Moline, where we did some rehab work there. So we already have the funding. Now we're getting ready to be reimbursed for all the work we did.
So is that, you would need to ask Mr. Schmidt to amend his amendment then?
Would we?
So
I guess my question was, as
Ms.
to legal.
Costopoulos, yes, could
I
you tell
thought
us?
because I would think we're amending that original language, which was to approve, and we're amending that language to include Silvis East Moline. So we do still want it to say approve, I believe.
Yeah, approve, but not to receive the funding and do all things necessary. So the information that's on the COW meeting, that language is the information that I'm asking council to approve to reflect in.
You're on.
1 second. Okay. Yes, Mr. Nguyen.
Should we table what was read do you have the language of what she actually should be reading?
Well, what she read for the COW meeting is correct. And I would ask you guys not to table it because we're supposed to be turning in our reimbursement.
No, so what I'm saying is the motion that's on the floor, get rid of that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then have her reread what the cow says and then move that.
Correct.
So
That would work.
I'll move to postpone this indefinitely.
Table it indefinitely.
So we'll just wipe
And
it off.
there's a second by Alderman Schmidt.
It might have been easier when he was in the middle of his amendment just to have him read this as change it to this.
It's okay, we're making a clean slate.
They're still going to need that though.
Yep. So with the tabling, there's no discussion, just a roll call vote, please.
And the first was Alderman Nguyen, and the second was,
Schmidt.
thank you. Alderman Williams,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.
And could you now, clerk, please read 7.2 with the language that was forwarded from the Cal meeting?
Okay.
Isn't that correct? It would be number 7.4.
It's 1097-2022. So this would be 1097, now I'm reading the way that it should be. A resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an amendment to the funding agreement between the City of Moline and the Illinois Housing Development Authority for the city's participation in the Trust Fund Single Family Rehabilitation Program Round 2, collectively SFR, and do all things necessary to implement said program requirements.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Alderman Went, seconded by Alderman Schmidt. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Williams?
Aye.
Macias?
Aye.
Went?
Aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Moyer?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Waldron?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays,
Thank you.
and that motion passes. All right, let me get back to where I am. Okay, first reading ordinances. Council Bill 3007-2022, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an ordinance amending Chapter 34, Water and Sewers of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Section 34-4100, Purpose, Intent, Section 34-4201, Drainage Permits, and Section 34-4203, Detention System Criteria, by repealing said sections in their entirety, enacting in lieu thereof new sections 34-4100, 34-4201, and 34-4203, dealing with the same subject matter.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is just for
This is
first
first
reading.
reading.
Oh, that is the first reading.
Council Bill 3008-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 20, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Appendix 10 thereof, parking prohibited at any time by including 36th Avenue on the north side for a distance of 40 feet from the stop sign at 41st Street. Council Bill 3009-2022, an ordinance amending Chapter 20, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Appendix 4 thereof, three-way traffic intersections by adding the intersection of 35th Avenue and 14th Street. And that is all I have this evening, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. We move to miscellaneous business. I don't have a lot, but there is a lot happening in Moline these days, in the Quad Cities, as the weather turns nice and events are starting. There are 5Ks and celebrations all over the place for lots of different things. And so I just encourage the council members to be a part of as much as they can to connect with the community. And Mr. Moyer and I are still working on our date for a listening post to connect with the community, but we will get to that. So that is what I have this evening. Mr. Williams?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Macias?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Went?
I've got two things. One was I had brought to my attention by a resident that the fire chief position had been posted, but when it was posted, it was limited to only internal candidates, that we were not opening it up for external candidates at all. And I guess historically, since I've been on council, if there was ever any determination to limit the pool or whatever, that was something that was usually brought to council to try to get a consensus if that's how we wanted to move forward. I mean, I'm sure we've got great internal candidates, but that for transparency, for the community and all of those things, we typically try to err on having it open to all comers. And so I didn't know where that decision was made and how that proceeded. And I just was curious about that.
Do you want me to speak to that? Sure, I'm more than happy to. Looking back historically at public safety recruitments for police chiefs and fire chiefs in public safety, they typically have strong succession planning put in place specifically so that there's a smooth transition when a chief retires or leaves employment with the city. In this case, in the fire department, we do have succession plans that were put in place, and I made the decision that it would be best to proceed with an internal recruitment first to see whether or not that would meet with the needs of the city. If not, then there would be an external recruitment process.
So I believe that either code or policy allows for an internal posting first.
Well, and that was
That's true.
my question. I mean,
That's true.
We definitely have some policies that can just happen, but as the elected body, I just think that it is good policy that if that kind of decision is made in which we're basically telling, because, the police chief, we had an external candidate, I think we all agree, worked out amazing for fire chief. It was internal and, but I think that from my standpoint, understanding that there's a good succession plan, that person probably has a unbelievable leg up on anyone else. But I think for transparency and because the alternative is you wind up kind of getting into these situations of, well, are we just wink wink nudge nudge in it, and I don't want us to be in those situations.
So, yes, Ms. Casapos, I'm wondering if we have a under the personnel requirement that any of this discussion is meant to be in executive session or not.
Well, we certainly
Could, but I think that this is important for the public to know
Okay,
about.
yeah, I'm just getting clarification.
Yeah. I'd like to add
But
another
she
comment.
wanted to say
if I could,
something.
Mayor.
So I believe, as I said, it was posted internally first, which is the usual course for positions in the city, which can be filled internally. So, like other positions, that does not come to council, and it's just a posting.
And I understand that, but aren't the vast majority of those positions union positions, and that's also part of the contract and those sorts of things? That there are a handful. There are some positions that are non-union that are a different animal than what we're governed by our ASPE contract or whatever, where some of that stuff is written into our contract. So I think we're talking about apples and oranges somewhat.
No, I don't think so, because certainly there is contract language, for instance, in the AFSCME, which allows for specifically internal filling of
Right.
positions. But as a general rule, postings do happen citywide regardless of actual position. They generally get posted internally first. Now, you might reject all of the internal candidates, or you might say, before we decide, let's post it, outside. And that would certainly be your call. But protocol here is post internally first.
Okay, points taken. Mr. Waldron?
I think I agree to a certain extent with Alderman Wendt. Transparency-wise, at least letting the council know that we're doing that process. Obviously, these are directors, these are cabinet members of the city administrator, these are important positions for us and the community. And for nothing else, it would be nice for us to be able to have knowledge of that. So if we get a phone call, we could say, well, this is the reason we're going that way. So I agree with Alderman Nguyen. It's a transparency issue for the community and for us to know.
Okay, thank you. You wanted to edit something or no?
Yeah, I would. Internal or external recruiting, I can speak from experience that where there are internal incumbents for a position at that level. Typically, when you go out, most outside professionals will look at the incumbency and usually not bother to apply. That's very, very common, no matter which position it is, whether it's this fire chief's position or police chief or even my position, if you have an internal candidate. That's one of the things that candidates do ask. They want to know. In fact, a lot of recruiters will actually post the fact that there are internal candidates for positions so that it doesn't waste their time. So, I mean, it's part of what goes on in the industry, and it's very common. So, but I agree. Keeping you better advised, we will make sure that we do that going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen, your other item?
Yeah, and to that point, I don't have any problem, I mean, with our internal candidates, it's more towards our perception to the public. The second issue is, and let's see, Tony.
He's online.
Is he, okay, Tony's online. So I got a message back from him, but I got a draft that I didn't get to send back to him. It came to my attention that we have an appeal process for our water usage. If there's a extreme leak or some kind of issue, because we bill every 3 months, there are situations in which somebody will have a water leak that happens, 3 weeks into the billing cycle, and they don't know it and wind up with a gigantic bill at the end. As a landlord, I've helped a number of, probably 3 or 4 of my tenants that wound up in a situation like that. Their bill could have been crippling to them for their monthly, what income they have versus what they can pay. And so I helped them, went through the process, and it has worked terrifically. I had a meeting with World Relief recently, and one of the concerns that they raised was they've run into a number of situations where they have tenants, refugees that are in properties, and our system works great if all the landlords are really great landlords and will participate and help and do all those things. But our situation right now is if we've got a tenant who the landlord's unresponsive, they wind up having to hire a plumber to come and actually fix the thing, and then they want to make an appeal, they can't. Our policy only allows the owner to make that appeal, even if the lease says the tenant is responsible. As far as we're concerned, the owner is responsible, and because it goes with the property, and that's fine. But I have some concerns that we're not allowing these tenants who, by no fault of their own, may be in these situations, may be saddled with a large water bill, and if they don't pay it, may get evicted. They want to appeal it, but our policy doesn't allow it. And so I guess what I'd like to do is to direct staff to review this issue and come back to us with their recommendations on how to maybe broaden this. I certainly think that the landlord should get notification if this appeal is happening, because there is a limited number of appeals on per property in those sorts of things. But I think closing them off can cause some real harm to those people who maybe don't have the best landlord in the world. And so I guess that's my motion, that we direct staff to do that.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second by Alderman Moyer. Further discussion? Mr. Walden.
We have to be extremely careful. Having sat through 30 years of appeals, there are a lot of landlords that want to put this on the tenant and not themselves. This is the property owner's responsibility, not the tenant's. And when we had it as the tenant's responsibility, we lost, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars because the tenants just take off. So the city made, the city made that knowingly that it should be on the property owner who runs a business, and this is part of that business. You're going to lose some, you're going to win some. And so I'm not against the motion, but we need to be very, very careful that we stay in our lane, that this is the property owner's responsibility and not the tenant's.
Okay. Mr. Wynn?
Yeah, and I'd echo that. If anything I said indicated that it should be anything other than the owner's responsibility, they should be financially responsible for it. But I think in some situations, the appeal should be open to both the owner and the person who ultimately by contract may be responsible for paying that bill, or may get evicted if it doesn't get paid. And so
It would be helpful to get perspective from how other municipalities deal with this, any similar situation. I mean, outside of knowing that we have landlord issues, we continue to try to get our hands around, to help them be more responsive. So that said, yes, Mr.
Yeah, I will add, and I know it's one of these things that is still hanging out there. I think if we can figure out a way to go to monthly billing, that would help immensely. And I know I've been beating this drum for years now, but it is something that, we've had a number of reports through time, but no movement on it, that I think that is something that would assist in this, so you don't have 2.5 months of a leak before somebody finds out that there's an issue.
Question?
Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Lodi.
Yes, thank you. Can I just add a couple of points of clarity to this information? One, Alderman Waldron, we call these internally waivers because they're defined in the ordinance under waste of water, and they're different than an actual utility dispute where the customer is actually disputing how the bill was calculated or the accuracy of the meter and such. And I had Liz pull the data from 2021, and we actually summarized it to you in a recent council update. But we had in 2021, we received 91 of these waiver requests, and of the 91, she tells me that 86 of them were approved. And of the 5 that were not approved, only 1 was not approved because it was a tenant. The others just didn't follow up with the necessary request for data and so forth. So that's kind of a point of reference for you all as you make your decision.
Okay, Mr. Wynn.
And I don't disagree, but in the application that set out, and this is where World Relief showed it to me, it says that it has to be made by owner. So the one tenant that did it didn't follow the rules. All those tenants out there that would have liked to make an appeal, they start reading the rules and it says, I have to go to my landlord. And some landlords are responsive. I don't want to denigrate landlords. I'm one of that, but there are, as we know, too many of them that aren't. And I want that's why I want staff's input on this. You guys live this every day. I just want to make this a little bit more flexible for our most concerns.
Mr. O'Brien and then Mr. Schmidt.
So the purpose of your motion is to have staff look at, because if I'm an immigrant, I'm an Irish immigrant, and I'm renting off Mr. Wint, and I have a huge water bill. So my recourse is to go to you, the landlord, and ask for.
Yeah. So right now, if you do that, and let's just say I'm a jerk, and I'd be like, that sounds like it's your problem.
I was not going to say that.
Yeah. But if I'm like, that's not my issue. I know you're always wasting water and whatever. That's your issue. I can't be bothered with it. You're stuck. Now, if I'm a good landlord, I say, oh, awesome. Okay, I'll send the plumber over. We'll get it fixed. Call down. I send the email. They go out and do a meter reading. They say, oh my goodness, yes, it had been consistently this much, and all of a sudden it peaked like this. The plumber came in, fixed it, it went down like this. That extra right there can be part of this waiver process, and we're good to go. Even though Walter shudders every time he hears it. But there, it is all contingent on whether I am willing to cooperate or not. And what I'm asking is, if I'm not willing to cooperate, that you should have some avenue to do it yourself.
Right, because it seems like it should be on the landlord.
Oh, 100%. And I agree. If we have all good landlords, they should absolutely do it. But in situations where the landlord is refusing to do it, I don't want the tenant getting stuck.
Okay, Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions on making sure how we would do it right, well, keeping responsibility where it needs to go. I'm sharing some of those same concerns, but I think I see a lot of merit to saying, hey, let's figure out if and how we can approach this to help people who get in that situation. And I think there's a lot more information we don't have yet, but I do think I'd like to see it.
Thank you. All right, anything further on that motion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Aye.
Macias.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Timian.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
Alderman Schmidt.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays.
All right, thank you.
Got it.
Those are your two
That's
things,
it.
thank you. Sorry, I didn't skip you, did I, Mr. Macias?
No.
No, okay. Mr. Timian? No?
You did not skip me either.
And do you have anything tonight?
Oh, nothing, Your Honor. I will mention, though, that Alderman Macias and I have not been able to hear Margaret when she speaks.
Your
So-
mic is too far away. Thank you.
That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moyer?
Since you mentioned community events, I want to put the fire department on alert. I'm running the 5K this weekend, Run the Rock. Otherwise, I'm gonna
Have the ambulance follow.
That's all I have, thank you.
Have the ambulance.
Mr. O'Brien?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes, Your Honor. I just hope everyone is as excited as I and the rest of the Main Street Commission for the summer concert series to be resuming. We have the first one will be on May 19th. That's not this week, but next week. And so I hope to see many of us there enjoying Smooth Groove. And it's a great, wonderful event running through the summer. Our schedule is a little bit modified this year. We were able to, through the commission and with Mr. Manis, going to cooperate a little better with our neighboring cities, so we have less competitive events, kind of overlapping with some of our neighboring cities. So just excited to get this going and to have a great summer and enjoy this warm weather we've been having.
Thank you. Mr. Vita?
Nothing this evening.
Chief Galt? By the way, one more hearty congratulations from
thank
the
you.
council. Yes?
Well, thank you. I'm a little embarrassed. I did not submit this in time to make the agenda, and I apologize. So I asked the mayor if I could speak in miscellaneous business. So Sunday marks the beginning of Police Week, which is celebrated this year, May 15th through May 21st. Those of you who may not know, was a national proclamation in 1962 by President John F. Kennedy, who signed the proclamation designating May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and then the entire week that it falls on as Police Week. Unfortunately, law enforcement has seen a continued rise in line of duty deaths. Already in 2022, 102 officers have died in the line of duty. 617 died in a horrific 2021 year for law enforcement. And over the last 5 years, 1,664 officers have lost their lives in the line of duty. Just last year, 62 of those deaths were as a result of gunfire, and 21 of them were a vehicular assault. This unacceptable trend has continued and unfortunately hit our area last week. Just last month, Knox County Deputy Sheriff Nick Beast was struck and killed by a vehicle as he deployed spike strips during a vehicle pursuit of an armed subject who had fled from the Galesburg Police Department. He died on April 29th, 2022. He was 34 years old, survived by his wife, 2 children, mother, father, and sister. He was run down trying to stop a fleeing felon. COVID pandemic has also hit law enforcement hard. Last year, 439 officers died from COVID-19 directly related to the line of duty. Ironically, I was notified about 6 months ago
as we come out of the pandemic, that Moline lost an officer to the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. Next week, Patrolman Roy Liesveld will be inscribed on the National Law Enforcement Memorial to honor his service to the city of Moline. And he died as a result of complications after contracting the Spanish influenza while on duty in 1918. He was in charge of driving the city ambulance to deliver influenza patients to and from the hospital during an outbreak in the city. Patrolman Liesveld also carried several patients to the city ambulance from their homes so they could be seen by health professionals. And during this work, he became ill, was confined to his bed. He died serving the Moline Police Department for 3 years, survived by his parents, wife, and daughter. He was 30 years old. The roll call of heroes for 2021 is way too long. And in the words of John F. Kennedy, it is fitting and proper that we express our gratitude for the dedicated service and courageous deeds of law enforcement officers and for the contributions they have made to the security and well-being of our people. I call upon the people of the United States to join in commemorating police officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so have established for themselves an inevitable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. All right, anything further from staff? Hearing none, is there public comment? Not at this time. Executive session.
Your Honor, I make a motion that the council convene an executive session for the purpose of discussion of appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, 5 ILCS 120/2C1.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Williams, second by Alderman Wendt. Roll call, please.
Alderman Williams.
Aye.
Macias.